right, real happy to have my next guest on the Sports Card Shop at Moco guest line. There are positive hobby people, and then there's this young lady who really keeps it positive. She's a great, the A words I use on the show a lot with people, ambassador and advocate. She epitomizes both of those words, and I want to welcome Erica from Love What You Collect. Welcome to Sports Card Nation.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
No, no problem. And even let's start with that handle, right? Love what you collect. I mean, there's positivity right off the bat with that tagline. Really, I mean, how did you? Where I mean, obviously it's kind of self-explanatory, but where'd you? How did that come? How'd you come up with that? Just the
That's a
obvious
great question.
reasons.
Oh, yeah, obvious reasons, but I just believe that people collect. They can collect books. They can collect pocketbooks or cards or sneakers or artwork. For the most part, if you're collecting something, it's some type of love and a passion there. So I just truly love collecting different things. So I would just like, that just kind of describes myself. So it's, yes, kind of self-explanatory, but I just love it. Love what you collect, plain and simple. And it describes like people like me and you.
Yeah, and you have fun with it. Like you said, you don't. I know this already, but for those listening, I mean, obviously, sports card. That's why we're on this show talking about it. But you have other things you collect. I know you're big into art. If for those that may be watching this on video later on after this airs on audio, your
Yeah.
background is full of artwork
Yep.
of people I know you admire, and I definitely want to get to that. But what I know it's art, cards. Anything else that you enjoy collecting?
I, yeah, I do. I have quite a few things I collect. I collect pens, like the pens you can wear. I collect a little bit of
Yep.
sneakers, more for artwork. That I don't wear them necessarily. I
Yep.
got into Funko Pops a little bit, but I'm big into collecting books. As I read the books too, but I just love a nice library, and I just love a couple books on the table, the coffee table. It's just wonderful. That's artwork in itself too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm more of a book reader. It's funny, Erica. I'm more of a book reader. The older I get, when I was younger, I did read. I don't want to make it sound like I did, but I've got more into it. The older I get, as far as reading, which I guess better late than never, as they say. But especially being in the teaching profession, I sort of
Yeah.
got to lead by example. I can't tell a young man or young lady, hey, read your books and not do it myself wouldn't be right. So yeah,
Yep.
I do a lot more reading now than then. I know I've heard you on other shows and talk about it. Your aunt, got you started in the hobby. Just talk a little bit about that. I know she's no longer with us, rest or so, but just what she meant to you, and and now you're passing that on the hobby to with your own daughter as well. Just kind of talk about that dynamic.
Yes. So my aunt, she used to collect basketball cards, 90s basketball cards, and I just remember her sharing that love and passion with me. I was maybe about 8, 9, 10, around that age bracket, and we collected for years. She would enjoy organizing her collection. I remember she would organize them in binders via teams like Bulls, Celtics, and that's how she liked to organize her cards. But it was awesome. We would go to a local LCS and just look at the other cards there too. But we just truly enjoyed it. We enjoyed watching sports too, so it just kind of went hand in hand, and it was just wonderful. And then when she passed away, when I was about maybe 12, 13, I stopped collecting and just focused on like high school work and basketball and stuff like that. And I recently got back into it about 3 years ago. My daughter, she's 6. She plays tennis. So I had a Naomi Osaka SI card. So I guess I was still collecting along the way, but just like little bit. Like I'll pick a card here and there. So I had this card for some reason, and I was like, "Hey, my daughter's name is Natiri," and I said, "Hey, Natiri, I'm gonna give you this card. So when you're taking a water break or just in between like playing, you can look at this card as motivation." And then I was looking at the car and it was really beat up. Like, you know, it was just terrible condition. It looked like a old vintage car that somebody put in their bike, you know, in between the bike tires. But then I went online to eBay to say, I was like, let me get another copy for a cleaner one. And then that's when I just fell back into that hole of like, wow, like, you know, I just kind of got sucked back in, which has been a really good thing because I've been enjoying it overall.
Yeah, and that's great. Like you know, you're having your daughter involved in it, and as she gets older as well. You know, are we looking at the next female tennis champion there? Not to put any pressure on her.
I wouldn't say that, but I would say she truly enjoys playing tennis. She likes watching
Yeah.
tennis too. But you know, she envisions herself going into space, being an astronaut one day.
Wow.
She loves riding horses, so she has many different interests. So I'm just supporting her, whatever decisions she makes along the way. But I think she'll be going to different avenues with things.
Well, she sounds, you know, it's nice that she's interested in multiple different things and eclectic with that. And she, you know, I don't obviously I don't know her, but you know, she's got a great example with you, her mom, and she's
Thank
probably
you.
very smart and probably whatever she ultimately decides to do, I'm sure she'll be, you know, successful. And so that's very nice to hear. So you know, so now you're full bore. I mean, you're going, you know, I see, you know, you're posting, you're at more shows than me. And I know you're a world traveler too. You've been to Europe and Asia and that, I mean, obviously shows because of the love of the hobby, but is there, I mean, other than wanting to see the world, which I think everyone in some form or capacity would like to do, is that why you travel so much? Is it some work related, or is it just, hey, I never been here, or I love this country and I want to go back? You know, why so much travel?
I just love traveling. I love seeing the world, meeting different people, seeing just different things, going to museums. I just love all kinds of people, all kinds of things. So travel just easy to gravitate to. I also don't like to sit still too much. Like if I sit, you know, Philadelphia for a whole year without travel, I'll kind of get like antsy, which happened during the pandemic.
I was
But at
going to
least,
say you
yeah,
probably weren't a fan of the pandemic
yeah, well,
for
yeah.
obvious
As
reasons.
far as that, but the card community helped out a lot though, making new
Yeah.
friends, listening to new content. That really kind of helped alleviate some of the anxiety and stuff I was having by sitting still in Philadelphia. But yeah, I've always just loved to travel. It's just something that's I just feel is a part of me, and I think travel loves me too. And it's kind of cool though that I live in Philadelphia, so I'm in the tri-state area, so it's kind of easy to get to like a New York or a Baltimore, DC to go to a show, or even Virginia too. Just hop in the car in like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, you're there. So I'm really blessed that I have that ability to do that. So I just kind of take full advantage of it. This a weekend, especially if I have some free time and I see a card show. Like I went to the one in American Dream Mall in New York, right outside of New York. We went
Yeah.
on Saturday, and that took about 2 hours to get to. But I was like, let's go check it out, and we went and checked it out, and we had a really really great time. We never been to that mall, so that
Yeah.
was pretty cool too.
Yeah, and again, I mean, we've seen, you know, this too, Erica. We've seen the rise of shows with the hobby boom in general. We're seeing more shows. We're seeing shows in places we did never had shows before. They just did one in Fenway Park area in Boston. I think we're going to start seeing more like that, and you know, I think it's going to be interesting where some of these shows are gonna like turn up. I mean, even in the Midwest, shows are booming. I mean, wherever they are. I mean, here in Syracuse, which is not, you know, full disclosure, is not a hotbed. Even though I live here now, I'm
Mhm.
originally from New York City, but I live here. Syracuse is not really a hotbed for sports cards, but you know, the last 4 or 5 shows have been tremendous, and I just think that goes along with the hobby growth. A lot of new people coming into space, and I'm a guy. You know, some people don't welcome new people in. I'm a guy that welcomes them in because we need. If you love your hobby, right, you need people in it transacting for it to be good and thrive and survive. And so I'm not to get get off my lawn, guys. Some people might fit that bill more. I don't like everything that happens, but that goes with any kind of industry or just life in general. And you got to roll with the punches. As long as someone's doing it, I always say, Eric, as long as someone's doing it the right way, not
Mhm.
ripping someone off, or doing something malicious, then you can hobby any way you want. You can collect different things, different sports, and there's no really wrong way to hobby if you're doing it the right way.
I fully agree with you. Yep.
So I got to ask you. I mean, not to make this a politics show because it's definitely not that, but we know kind of a lot of stuff has went up in price, including airfare. I know that firsthand.
Mhm.
Has that really hindered any travel for you? I know, like you said, you being kind of located in Philly, you're sort of central to a lot of the bigger cities, tri-state area where you can drive. Although gas is not cheap either, but beats airfare by a mile. Has what's going on with inflation or anything like that cramped your style at all?
That's a great question. As far as gas, yeah, I'm just a little bit more hesitant for going on driving in general. Here in Philly, gas is about 4.80. I've seen a few
Yeah,
gas stations hitting about $5 some places a gallon for regular. So, uh, yeah, the gas prices is a deterrent because I'm like, if I had to put an extra $30 in gas for this trip, I could maybe just save that $30 and then put it towards a cart and buy online or via somebody, off of Instagram or something to that effect, you know. But I was looking at some airfare for a show and I did notice the prices increase at least double the price.
yeah.
So I was just like, I'm just going to kind of stay local and this kind of just save up and get ready for national. So that's kind of my game plan. But yeah, I definitely have scaled back a little bit as far as traveling for shows. But actually, next week, I am going to be going to New Orleans for a trip, not cart related, but me and Natiri, we're going to go visit one of our favorite cities.
Well, I'm jealous because it was funny. I had this conversation with my wife the other night. Places we haven't been to, and New Orleans is number one on my list that I haven't been to yet. I've never been there. One of the reasons it kind of has a lot of stuff for not ever being there. It has a lot of things that I'm interested in. I love Cajun Creole food, jazz, and it's one of the most haunted cities. And I'm a big
Yep.
kind of ghost show and ghost adventure guy. So it has all those elements that I like, and so someday I'll get there. So I'll be looking at your social media feeds and
Yeah.
probably drooling and being jealous, just thinking I'd love to see a national there. I did a
Yeah.
poll on my Twitter where that's really our home base for the show. And I put New Orleans, Seattle, Phoenix, and St. Louis. And
Mhm.
had people vote, got over 1,200 votes, and it was close between the four cities. I voted for New Orleans. They actually finished last at 22%, but
Really?
St. Louis, which won, only had 30%. So it was only 30. It was like 30, 25, 24, and 22. So it was really
Yeah.
bunched up. So even though it sounds like last, they were fairly close last, and so I'd love to see it in a city like that.
Yeah.
I plan on going to every national I can get to, so it would be definitely a reason, no excuses to not get to New Orleans. Then. So hopefully, you never know, right? You never know what could happen next. We've seen that in this hobby, right? Just
Yep.
when you think you've seen it all, something else happens. I think that's what keeps it interesting and whatnot. So again, you're very positive, an advocate, an ambassador for the hobby. We need more of that. We don't have enough, even though we have a lot. Being female in the hobby, have you had any issues? Like when I'm going to speak for myself. I
Hmm.
don't. You're a hobbyist. There's not a male hobbyist. There's not a female hobbyist. I'm a dealer myself. If someone comes in my table, they collect or buy cards. That's you can have a conversation with anyone. You can transact with anyone. I don't look at it like that. Have you had? Has that been an issue though? Have you dealt with that at all?
A few times, um, not a whole lot overall through all my travels and going through different shows and stuff, but a few times it has happened. Like one time in particular, a dealer, I was looking at a card and my daughter was standing next to me, we're just looking, and then he was like talking to me as though I didn't know anything about the player, the sport, the card, and I just kind of just I just like okay, like I didn't even he wasn't even worth my time to even let him know that I knew what I was doing. So I was just kind of looking, and then he says to my daughter, "Tell your mom to take go in her purse and take out her credit card and pay for the card." My daughter's 6 years old, and she was just like looking like no one's ever said anything like that to her, and you know what I mean. So then I had to just pull her aside and just explain to her, like why that was wrong, and just kind of ignore that, and we don't not going to support a shot from people who are disrespectful to us or to anyone else. Because if I was standing there and it happened to someone else, I would feel the same way. I would feel offended, and I wouldn't support that dealer too. So, and then he was just kind of looking all strange and crazy, but I was just like, I couldn't believe he said that to her. Like
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
like really out of line.
yeah, uncalled for. I
Yeah,
wasn't there obviously, but I obviously knowing you a little bit, you're not gonna make up something
yeah,
like that. There's no reason to do that. I mean, it's
yeah.
the old adage, right? If you got nothing good to say, don't say anything at all. And again, to say that to your daughter, I think
Mhm.
even sort of exacerbates that. It
Yeah,
sounds like you kept a cool head and just kind of moved along, and but
yeah.
it's too bad you have to, your daughter and you have to, that happens even at all. But I've done the show circuit enough to know
Mhm.
there's people that look through a different lens than maybe I
Mhm.
do. I was raised in Brooklyn in the melting pot, and
Yep.
I was raised by my grandparents, and from an early age, my grandma would say there's good and bad in every race, religion, but
Yep.
you don't judge it by that. You judge it by the person's actions and,
Yeah.
and how they are as a person, not anything else. And I'm glad I was raised like that from very early on. And I think obviously I think we're a product of our environments too. I was raised the right way, and some people
Yep.
maybe aren't as fortunate. Not to give them a pass. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they're off the hook for how they
Yep.
behave. I'm just saying it does start at home, and
Yeah.
hopefully it doesn't, and that's where that change can happen. I've seen you, in your posts, you behind the table with your cards. Are you setting up at shows?
Well, me and my daughter set up at a show about an hour away in New Jersey. It's a small show. We really enjoy it. It happened on Friday nights, once a month. So maybe every other month we'll set up. We do it more for just bonding, fun. We want
Yeah,
to go to the show anyway, so we're like, since we're driving so far and paying tolls, we might as well just set up and just see what we can do. And most of the time, my daughter's behind the table talking, and so I have gained that experience as far as selling cards behind the table, and what how people interact and what people are looking for, and so it's been interesting. I'm observant, and I find it to be very interesting.
it's a great thing, for your daughter too. Like
Yeah.
I love card shows for the social. Like if I have a choice between buying a card in person or obviously online, and I do both. Don't get me wrong.
Hmm.
I've always said this, right? Nothing beats that in-person transaction. Those conversations you have, the great people you get to meet. Even besides the story, for every one of those, there's 10 great people that you'll have a conversation with, and I don't think you can trade that. And
Yep.
one of the reasons I love going to the shows. That's one of the reasons I like setting up at the shows. and even setting up as a dealer. And I think you touched on this too, Eric, in your answer. You know, obviously, if you're a seller, you want to sell, right, and make some money. I don't think you have to. Anyone has to apologize for that. Me, you, or any other dealer that sets up, right? But some of the best shows haven't been even the ones where I've made the most money on. It's been the ones that I did okay. I don't want to make it like it was a it was a bad show, but those conversations and the people you meet sometimes can make all the difference in the world. You can't put a price on certain things like
Yeah.
that, and especially when we had the pandemic and a lot of that was shut down
Mhm.
for a year and a half, and we lost that for a little bit, and it's good to get back out there and get that interaction. I mean, what if you only could pick one? I think I know your answer, but you can only be on one side of the table. Would you rather go as just to walk around, be a consumer, and do it that way, or be behind the tables?
More so consumer because I'm really just more of a collector, you know. So as far as that, but as far as talking to people and interacting with people, being behind the table is a little bit more easier to do that. And people, somebody comes to the table and starts looking at a card, and then they might not be talkative, but then if you mention something about the card, like, oh yeah, he or she, they had a great game, and then next thing you know, they'll start lighting up and talking about, yeah, I saw that game, and next thing you know, they just start talking. So I think that's been a difference I've noticed, being behind the table a little bit more. People are a little bit more open up a little bit quicker than if you were just another attendee standing next to each other on the other side.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that too. When I was a younger, I did my first show, believe it or not, at 15 years old. People listen to the
Nice.
show are like, "We heard you, John." It's like only the 25th time you said it, but I was really shy, young kid, and so I would really not talk. I wasn't being rude. I was just so
Mhm.
shy. I wasn't good at like starting conversation. It was awkward, and obviously, the older I've gotten, I've sort of honed that and practice. I don't want to say, man, I'm not perfect, but practice. You get better with it the more you do it. And so, but it goes a long way to be able to conversate, and I think it sort of breaks that ice, right? That sort of like who's gonna say something first, right? It's kind of like a standoff, like who's gonna say hello or whatever the conversation starts with. But I was terrible at an early age. It's something I've gotten better with age, and especially doing this now. You better be able to conversate, or you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you is, you mentioned, going to the national. Would this be your first national, or have you been to one prior?
I went last year to the one
Yeah,
in Chicago. I went solo, so Natiri didn't go with me to that one. But
yeah.
uh, Chicago, it was nice. It was a good experience. Overall, was good. It was very good actually. So I am looking forward towards the one in AC. Um,
That's right
yeah,
in your backyard. I mean, this is made. This is set up on a tee for you, right in your
yeah.
backyard.
It's about an hour and 15 minutes
Yep.
out right from Philly. So it's right in the backyard. I'm really grateful for that and being able to attend. So I know for a lot of people it's kind of a hard destination to get to, being that it's over
Yep.
an hour from Philly, and some of the flights have been a little bit pricey for people. So,
Yep.
you know, so I am grateful to I can attend.
Yeah, I'm fortunate here in Syracuse. It's five and a
Mhm.
half hours. We'll be
Yeah.
we'll be driving. My wife's actually going. Normally, she would not go. Erica, she's
Yeah.
not a card I mean, she supports me, but it's not her
Yeah.
thing. She's gonna go and just go on the beach with a beverage and an
Yeah.
umbrella and a book, and
Yeah.
it's gonna be a vacation for her. And we're gonna be in the convention center. It'll be our vacation, our card vacation, and
Yes.
it's
That's
gonna be
awesome. That's awesome.
yeah,
She'll have a really good time. The
yeah,
beach, and boardwalk, and all the casinos. It's a lot to do. So
yeah,
she'll
yep.
yeah. She'll
Something
she'll
for
she,
everybody.
Yeah, not for everybody, but it's a lot to do. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So, and the nice thing is, I've said this on my show. Normally, if I make the trip myself, like last year, Chicago, like you mentioned, that I flew in myself, that comes out of the business account. But the
Yeah.
fact that she's actually making this trip, that can come out of the joint account. So I'm getting to save. I'm getting to save a little money this year, Erica. I'm kind of stoked about that, and it'll be fun. Now I got to ask you, last year being your first national Chicago, my first one was a few years before that, and is even as long as a hobby that I've been in it. I didn't go to the national until I think 2018. And you have in your mind kind of what other people you listening to content, what other people who went before telling you what it's like, and then you get in there yourself, and it's like even beyond that. Would that describe the experience for you?
Yes, definitely. The thing that I wish I had more time. I didn't have time to really go around to as many tables as I wanted to, or look through their cards as I wanted to. So that was one thing that and I went for I think 3 days. I was there for 3 days, so was there a nice bit of time, but you really need, especially if you're really looking and you're really hunting and just trying to see different cards, because you got to remember you're going to be seeing people or you don't know, and you're talking to people, so you got to account for that time as well. And also too, you'll be
Yeah,
pretty tired standing on your feet all day, so that kind of slows you down a little bit too. Like I noticed that, like after 5 hours, I'm like dragging a little bit, so kind of
yeah,
slow you down. But
yeah.
yeah, it's a great place to buy cards, look at cards. I don't really sell as much, like transactionally,
Yeah.
but for people who do, it's a great place for that. And the networking aspect, it was good. Last year I did sit by the stage and listen to some of the speakers speak, so I thought that was pretty good. So hopefully they expand on that this year.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with that. To be honest with you, we had our show here had Ray Schulte on and his son Ryan on about a month ago, and said it was still kind of in the early stages with what they're doing. I was fortunate last year. Me and Brody the Kid got to do a segment on the main stage, and a big thrill for both of us. Being
Nice.
13 years old and 48 years old, we were both having a blast. And I hope we get to do it again, but we'll see. We'll see how that shakes out. But there'll be plenty to do. And like you said, a great point that you made is, just you almost need a day just sort of to meet everyone that you've gotten to know online, that you haven't met in person, or maybe you met last year and hey, I'm gonna meet them again and talk. And you almost need one day sort of just for that, and then you need like a couple of days where you really heads in the showcases and boxes and see what you can treasures you can find. I got to ask, what does your daughter like to collect? Like when she goes to the shows, what does she eagle eye and what is her what does
Um,
she go after?
she goes after like the shiny cards, like the prism discos, you
Yeah,
know. uh, So she likes those cards, colorful cards, basketball. Um, she would like to collect more tennis, but it's not a lot of tennis cards, and a lot of tennis cards are a little bit on the
right.
dull side of things.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to downplay or disrespect tennis cards, but just kind
No,
of look
it
at it, and it's like
does.
basically a photo, and it's not much
Yeah.
more than that,
Yeah, hey, there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't knock your socks off, right? It
Yeah, so
doesn't
especially for
doesn't
her,
move the
like, yeah,
meter.
exactly. So that's pretty cool.
I'm
Yeah.
not a tennis expert, and you probably know what I'm about to say. It's fairly still affordable, Erica. I don't think aesthetically wise, it's a beautiful looking set. And you probably know about it. That I think it's the 2003, the Net Pro set. I think the boxes are still fairly reasonable. Has some of those folks' rookie cards in it. It's I don't think that the cards I've seen, they're like you said, they're fairly plain looking, but
Mhm.
um, like there's not a that's the thing. There's not a lot in tennis to choose from. It's not like your other sports.
Correct.
So but I think we're gonna start seeing more. We're gonna start seeing more of that, not the mainstream sports, if you will, some of the off mainstream. I think we've seen that already with F1 and other
Yeah.
sports, or soccer blew up, and tennis. I mean, even the older stuff of tennis has increased in price. I think we'll just start to see more companies producing it and manufacturing it. So tell her to hang tight. I think help is on the way there.
Yeah.
I think that won't be a problem. I think for too much longer. I know some of what you collect from hearing you on other shows. One thing, I wanted to ask you a question. I wanted to get your opinion on this. When I started, Eric, at 7 years old, I was a sports kid. Like I watched sports, I played sports, and then I found out about cards. And I went to the store with my grandfather, and he bought me a couple packs, and the rest is history. Pulled the Reggie Jackson out of the first pack, being in New York City, and away we went. I feel like today, some people, not just kids, but some people, I got into it because I like sports. I think that you know, kind of covers you too with your aunt being sports fans first. I feel like that's not always the way it is now. I think some people get into the hobby, maybe dollar signs, or they see what some cards are sell for. I think it's sort of different. I'm not saying everyone. I don't want to paint with a broad brush and that sort of thing. But I think there's more of that now. People who aren't necessarily huge sports fans that are in the card industry, where back in my day, you almost had to be a sports fan or you wouldn't care about the cards. You wouldn't have an interest. I mean, you think that's correct, I mean, where do you fall on that topic?
I agree with you 1,000%. I notice that all the time, uh, it, and it's kind of crazy to me because I can't really process it. Because I'll hear people say, I have this soccer cards or whatever, and they like, yeah, I don't watch soccer. I never even seen this player play. Then I might say, have you seen any like highlights, like even on TikTok, a minute worth of highlights? You'd be like, no. And I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, I can't even process that, like, you know. But you're right. I think and I think this is a big issue too, because if people want to really expand our hobby as far as getting new people in it, whether adults or kids, they have to be able to connect it to the love of the sport and the passion of the sport with the card for new people to come into in a natural way and for them to stay. I believe that really is like the only way to do it, because if you go about it the other routes of, about the money making or whatever the case may be, people might dip their toe in, but they're going to get out the pool and not come back. You
yeah,
know, it has to be. It's like, like say I know people that go to Sixers games and they budgeted their season tickets, parking, concession, their jerseys. They budgeted for every year X amount of money, But when I talk to them about cards, they don't even like think twice. They just stare at me sometimes. And I'm like, well, do you think you might want a Joel Embiid card? Maybe like, nah, I'd rather get his jersey or I'd rather get the T-shirt. You know,
yeah.
they'll say stuff like that. So I'm like,
Yeah, there's
yeah,
still a little bit of a divide there between
yeah,
being a sports fan. I think Fanatics is hoping to bridge that gap and be the
hmm
bridge. Whether that happens or not, well, I don't think there's a guarantee. Even with Fanatics' clout and money and what they bring to the table, I don't think it just automatically happens. Kind of bringing Fanatics into this. What are your thoughts there? Are you there's a lot of people who are sort of pessimistic that it's sort of going to be kind of a financial play for them and maybe not care about the collector like you or me. And then there's
hmm
others that are more cautiously optimistic of how they're going to be. I mean, they haven't really even started yet, even though they've got the
yeah.
licensing. I mean, what are your thoughts? Yeah, are you nervous about it? Are you concerned, or are you fairly confident like they're going to change the game When I say game, I mean the card game in a positive way.
I'm kind of in the middle of the road with it. At first, I was a little nervous. I'm like, oh man, uh, I just because a lot of times when you think about Fanatics, a lot of people you know don't necessarily think like super high of the quality or different
Yeah,
things like that of what they put out. But so I was kind of nervous at first, but now I'm kind of in the middle of the road. I know every business needs to focus on their finances and grow. I get that, but I believe you can also, take care of the greater good of the community and truly grow it. Um, I have no idea what their plans are in place. I have my fingers crossed for the good, but I don't really see it happening. But I think they have the platform to do it and to actually grow this hobby. But I don't know if they have uh, the right goals or the right vision to in place for it. Because I truly believe they need to focus on the younger demographic and also just people who aren't in the hobby.
yeah,
They need to get to a place where when people like say if it's two women 40 years old, right, and one says, oh yeah, so my friend's birthday is coming up, they need to get to a point where it's like they can buy them a bottle of wine and maybe a PSA slab or whatever slab, BGS slab, to go with their bottle of wine so they can place their favorite player,
yeah.
Patrick Ewing, on their mantle next to their candles or something like that. They need to get to a place where just like that's kind of like a easy thought to digest, for just the average person who's consuming and spending. And most of the time it's, women who are in charge of, the finances and the extra spending. So I think once they get a hold of having more people understand the concept of why it's okay to buy a sports card, and also why it's okay to buy the sports card and not really think about the financial gain from it. That
Yep.
should be extra. It's a certain. I do believe it's a certain place for the finances and the assets of it. More of higher end, but just your average, $200 card or so. People should be buying it like they buy a piece of artwork. Like, hey, I'm gonna hang this up. So, and when my friends come over, we drinking some wine or talking about this latest book we read or vacation. They can see these 3 cards that I acquired over the last 3 years. Like, I get myself a card a year. Like, they need to get to a point where people are just okay with that process. That's my point of view on it. Because I just look at the dynamics of how people spend. Like, I know people who buy a pair of sneakers once a year, really nice sneakers once a year, or a purse, or a vacation. Like, you can go down the list of things that they
Yeah.
splurge on because of a pure pleasure. And I think sports cards should be added into it. And then the bonus, the cherry on top, is that it can be easily passed down. It also can be easily sold if you need the hard cash, if
Yeah.
proper systems are in place. So that's just my 2 cents on it.
No, I agree with you. And again, Erica, if Fanatics' goal is to bring more people to the hobby, and it is their goal because they've said that as much. We're not even speculating on that. That's been in, when Michael Rubin's been interviewed, he has said that. Josh Luber has stated that. If that really is a goal, and it is, price point is going to be a huge factor in, right? I don't care what industry or what hobby you do, right? Whether you can afford it is whether you're going to stay in it. And so I
True.
understand they have to make money. They're a business. Let's keep it real.
Yep.
But at the same time, they got to have that balance of, hey, we can be profitable and we can be at a price point where we're not killing folks out there and they stay long term. Because I think ideally you don't want someone coming in and leaving 3 months later. You want someone
True.
coming in and not only staying for the long haul, but bringing their friends and family members into the fold as well. I mean, that's the perfect scenario. And so you want to get to a price point where that's feasible to happen, and you can pay your bills as a business too, and pay your employees and be profitable. And I
Yeah.
think that balance can be had. I don't know anyone that says, "Oh, that's very hard to do, John." And I'm not buying that. It can be done. There's smarter people than me in that room that need to figure out what that is. It's easy. I agree. It's easy for me to sit behind this desk and say, hey, they got to do that. But
Hmm.
there's a lot of smart people there that can figure out what that is and what it entails, and
Yep.
sort of think of the consumer and themselves at the same time, and try to get both ends of that spectrum,
Yeah.
happy. And I think it can be done. Whether it happens, I'm like you. I'm sort of, I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic. I guess it depends on the day. Some days I'm pessimistic. I've seen, Josh Luber do some stuff lately that now I'm falling on the pessimistic side again.
Yeah.
So I guess it depends what day you ask me what my thoughts. I might say something different. But I will say this: it's going to be fun to watch what happens.
Yeah.
Just the same. Another thing I admire about you, Erica, is what you collect is not just the performance, on the field, on the court. It's what that person is about, what they stand for, what they represent, and that, hits near and dear to my heart. As many that listen to the show or know me, growing up in Brooklyn, even though I never, unfortunately, got to see him play, my father did in Ebbets Field, and Jackie Robinson died in October of 1972, and I was born in November of 1972. So, I was born a month after his passing. But growing up in Brooklyn, there's no way you weren't going to know who Jackie Robinson was, the player, but more importantly, the human being and the man. And what he did. I always say this: as great of an athlete, and he was a five-sport athlete. We know him mostly as a baseball player because that's where he went professional. But track, football, uh, you know, and just an incredible. Whatever he wanted to do, he probably could have did it. He wound up choosing baseball, and but what he did off the field, his baseball career was short. Obviously because of the barrier, he didn't get to play until he was 28 years old in 1947. So he had a 9-year career, and but what he did during his playing days for social efforts, and even more so even after his career was over. He didn't just fade into the darkness and enjoy retirement. He was on the front lines and standing up for what he believed in. And for a kid growing up in Brooklyn, and my dad, who got to watch him play in Ebbets Field, uh, I knew early. I knew from a very early age who this person was. And as I got older, I obviously, I talked about not reading a lot when I was younger. Most of the stuff I read was pertaining to Jackie and what he meant to everybody, not just baseball fans, but to
Yes.
the world. And so he's my guy. I'm wearing my Brooklyn Dodger cap right here. And so when I hear you speak to that with athletes that you admire, not just for the performance on their competition field, but off it. It really strikes a nerve to me, and I love that. And just talk about. I know Althea Gibson is one. Will Chamberlain, I've heard you, but talk to some of those folks that, for you, moved your meter, and like Jackie for me, who
Hmm.
who was that for you?
As far as moving the meter, it probably would have to be Venus and Serena Williams, especially
Yep,
because of being able to see such a long career over 2 to 3 decades, and seeing what they have to
yep,
go through. And
yep.
yeah, because I remember one time I was an undergrad, and I was in between like class and going to practice, and I was sitting down and I was like, let me watch Serena's match. So I'm watching her match, and next thing you know, a fan starts saying all types of crazy things to her, like, and I'm just sitting there like just crying, like, oh, this is just nuts. But you know what she did? Like, she was mad, but she just, told the umpire, such and such, can you just please deal with that? She went out there and played and finished the match, and just kept, pushing on. And, and I know athletes or people in general, the biggest thing you think about is I have to just endure this, get through this, try to make it better so others won't have to deal with this and make the world a better place. So, I always tip my hat to athletes in particular when they do it, because a lot of times the easiest way out for them is not addressing it at all, because a lot of people might not like it. A lot of people do think, just stick to the sport, that's what we watch for. But the world is filled with beautiful people of all nationalities and
Yep.
races, and we really just have to protect that, and speaking up and fighting for what's right to make a better future is extremely important. Like growing up for me, I heard about like Will Chamberlain a lot, Bill Russell, all the things that even just local athletes, things that they just had to endure. And they're always talked about, we've got to get through this and make it better for the next generation, make it better for the next generation. So, and also too, athletes are looked up upon in society's views. So typically a lot of times society does listen or watch what they're doing.
Yep.
So that's why I think it's really, really important that they, just speak their truth.
Yeah, no doubt, and Serena and Venus Williams are great examples. You can draw Erica, you can draw the parallel between them and Jackie Robinson, even though it's 50 years after his playing time. There was not there. I remember when they first started on the circuit, and there was a lot of animosity. And let's not sugarcoat it. Hate. There was people rooting against them,
Hmm.
and I rooted for them. Just I didn't know them. Other than that, they were excellent tennis players from New York. I might add, but I rooted for them because of that. Because they had to go out there and hear who knows what, and perform under. It's pressure to perform in a pro circuit in general.
Yep.
It's hard enough to play the opponent across from you. They're just as good or similar to you, and then you got to hear who knows what and taunts from the stands. Even 50 years, 40, 50 years after Jackie broke the color barrier. And so I rooted. There were sort of I guess you'd almost say sort of like the tennis equivalent, even though it was many years later. And so I completely get that. And the
Yeah.
best thing they could do, right, to stop that is win, right? Is
When,
win and
yeah.
and make your voice louder by winning. And like you said, we look up to athletes, right? And whether it's fair or not, we tend to look up to more successful athletes than less successful athletes. I'm not even saying that's fair,
Yeah.
but that's just the
I
way
totally
it
agree.
goes. So your voice gets louder when you win, grand slams and major tournaments. And so I was
Yep.
glad when they did that, because it was a way to lead by example, make your voice louder, and kind of as best you can drown out those type of folks that are spewing, you know, nasty stuff and
Yeah.
hateful stuff. And
It,
it's never. Let's be honest, it's never going to be, uh, go away. But the less of it that exists, the
mm,
better off everyone is. And so yeah, I wasn't necessarily a huge tennis, fan, but I rooted for them on that reason alone, and I mean just being super talented to boot. And so when you were
yeah.
talking about that, I saw the parallel with what Jackie had to endure, and it's sad. It's sad when you think about it, because it's 40 years later, and it's
Hmm.
like, what have we learned? And
Yep.
apparently not enough, or at least some
Yep.
people
Yep.
not enough. And so and I like that. Uh, anytime someone collects somebody, obviously they're superstars, and Jackie's cards are not cheap. Believe me, I know, but it's not just dollar signs. It's what that person means to you personally. And I love when if I ask somebody, "Hey, who do you collect? Why do you collect them?" And hey, because growing up, they were my favorite player, and they did this. I saw this. They went to the hospital and visited sick kids, and I love that. Whatever the storyline that goes with it, it's not just, hey, I pulled a card and it was, you know, it was worth $1,000, and I started collecting more. And not that there's
Yep.
anything wrong with that. I mean, that
Yeah.
each to each their own. But I appreciate when someone can talk about the player and what they
Yeah.
meant to, more than the sport. You know, we
Yes.
you know while they're great athletes, they're also human beings, right? They're on that field or tennis court or ice or basketball court, whatever the playing field for 2 3 hours, and then 21 other hours they're a human being. And so when someone can bring that human element to why they admire somebody or why they collect somebody, it really hits home for me, because that's really what got me, with Jackie Robinson. And growing up in Brooklyn, it was really entrenched very early on that this is someone bigger than the playing fields he was playing on. And so it always warms my heart when I hear that stuff. So kudos there.
Yes, I totally agree with you, and that's something that keeps me in the hobby.
Yep.
That's that's the main reason why I love to just continue to collect, talk to people who collect and have a genuine love and passion for the players, the athletes on these cards, um, and the people that they are outside of the sport. Most importantly,
Yep.
because a lot of times it does get frustrating sometimes when people they'll look at a card or something like, oh, they're on a losing team, or they're not winning, or they're not doing this. But I just like, I'm like, just try not to look at the negative so much. Maybe look at the positive. Maybe to say
Yep.
that's not somebody I collect. But most people, either they're complimenting the player or athlete, or they're just like dissing them. There's
Yeah.
no in
There's
between.
no.
It's,
Yeah.
there's no in
Yep.
between. And I'm like, it's okay to express your negative thoughts or whatever you may be, but just sometimes have some in between. Like I really try my best to be as positive as I can, and respectful as I can towards the athletes, because a lot of times I think people, fans, or collectors in general, are very quick to be very
Yep.
negative and and just like beat up on the athletes. But I sit there and say to them,
And
like, most of these professional athletes started playing a sport when they were 10 years old, and they devoted their whole lives to getting better, to try to reach where they wanted to get and to be a professional. And that's something that uh, only them can truly understand, and to say someone is trash, or this and the third, is just like, that's disrespecting their journey, even if it's not the outcome that you wanted for them. So
yep.
I'm just like,
We're
I got,
seeing that too. We're seeing
yeah,
that at games with people heckling, or it's crazy what some people uh what level somebody will go to. And
yeah,
in person, I'm all, if you want to boo the opponent, if the opponent comes in to play the Sixers and you want to boo them, I get that. Like,
yeah,
but to like personal stuff, and
yeah,
you hear like they're finding out like personal info about like a mother or father or family,
mm,
and they're bringing that to the event and yelling it out. It's just, there's no room for that as far as
yeah,
I'm concerned. You want to boo the person, you want to even a you stink, or you know what I mean.
yeah,
Uh, that's all. I mean, I don't necessarily like that, but at least you're just keeping it. Hey, you hear that all the time at like hockey games. They do that to the goalie. But when you start like bringing family members and personal stuff
yep,
to it, that's the line that shouldn't be crossed. And
fully
we're
agree.
seeing we're seeing a lot more. Unfortunately, I don't know why. I don't know if maybe with the pandemic, people are just angry, right? I'm not making excuses. There's no call for it or no excuse for it, but I don't know where it comes from, especially recently.
Yeah,
That's only just something I'm throwing out there. I'm not saying it's even right, but I just, no excuse for it. And it's sad to see. And hopefully, smarter heads prevail. We're seeing some of these arenas ban these people for life, and I think
yeah,
that's, as much as I don't want anyone to get banned, but what you were doing. Like
yep,
you did that. Now you got to pay the penalty. If you don't want that to happen, you shouldn't have did what you did.
Yep.
40 other thousand people behave themselves and they get to come to the next game. That could have been you, but you chose to do something that you shouldn't have. So I feel bad, but I don't feel bad. I mean, that's just common sense. So
Yeah.
hopefully we start seeing less of that, but I don't know. But Erica, I appreciate you making some time.
Of
I love
course.
what you're doing. Keep it up. Keep going. I'm gonna be following the timeline to check out the New Orleans stuff for sure. I'd be
Yeah.
following anyway, but definitely want to see that and look forward to meeting you in your
Yes.
backyard in Atlantic City for sure. And I appreciate you what you're doing, the positivity that you bring to the table, and a few people could probably take a page out of your book. So,
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on, and I really enjoy chatting with you, and look forward to seeing you in Atlantic City for the national.
yes, no doubt, no doubt. Likewise.